Most debates aren't a search for truth. They're a contest of emotional wills. And in just a moment, you'll learn the 7 simple sentences that can dismantle any one of them. You felt it. Someone makes a vague accusation. They twist your words. They raise their voice, hoping volume will mask a hollow point. But there's an ancient method, refined by Stoic thinkers, that never fights fire with fire. It responds not with rage, but with razor-sharp inquiry. The real secret, one few ever grasp, is that these inquiries don't just challenge the other person. They fortify your own mind. They anchor you against the storm of emotion. They force clarity from confusion. The Stoics used this to protect their inner peace. Socrates used it to dissolve false certainty. Today, you will learn how to apply it to remain poised, sharp, and unshakable. These are 7 inquiries that can quietly deconstruct any disagreement, not by overpowering the other side, but by revealing the weakness in their reasoning. Let's begin. 1. Could you clarify what you mean? This is the initial inquiry, and it can transform a confrontation's energy in an instant. Most conflicts start with hazy, emotionally loaded claims. Someone hurls a label, irresponsible, biased, unreliable, and anticipates an instant heated reaction. These terms only carry weight because they are imprecise. They are engineered to trigger feeling, not convey fact. The Socratic insight we often forget is this: a vague charge endures only if you permit it to stay vague. So, instead of getting defensive or accepting the emotional frame they're constructing, you pause. You ask with genuine curiosity, could you clarify what you mean? No sarcasm, no defensiveness, just a pursuit of understanding. And understanding is toxic to emotional disputes. The instant you pose this, the dynamic flips. You cease reacting. You start requiring precision. Most individuals cannot supply it. Their claim wasn't constructed on logic, but on a fleeting sentiment. This question pulls a debate from an emotional haze into the light of day. It decelerates the escalation. It compels the other individual to confront their own language. It keeps you rooted in reason, not dragged into chaos. Imagine a colleague states, your approach on that task was unreliable. You could protest, fluster, or justify. Instead, you ask, could you clarify what you mean by unreliable? Suddenly, they must pinpoint specific actions, not hide behind a label. The force of their critique often evaporates on the spot. Or consider a partner saying, you're always distracted. A reactive person battles a word, always. A Stoic-influenced person asks, what does being distracted look like to you in this instance? Now the dialogue moves from blame to definition, from friction to potential understanding. Stoicism teaches us not to accept impressions without scrutiny. A vague comment is merely an impression. This inquiry pushes the speaker from impression to lucidity, from sentiment to rationale. Your delivery is crucial. Your tone must be even, your pace measured, your breathing steady, a composure that communicates. I am here to comprehend, not to combat. When someone is made to find their charge, they unveil either a genuine misunderstanding or a hollow point. Either way, you steer the exchange not with force but with focus. Could you clarify what you mean is not a rebuttal. It is a lens. And most emotional disputes shatter when forced to see themselves clearly. Clarity is the antidote to chaotic conflict. 2. What evidence supports that? This inquiry halts misinformation, overstatement, and emotional narratives at the door. People state things with conviction that they have never verified, never confirmed, never truly examined. They speak as if their feelings were facts and their hunches were data. Most disagreements ignite from this type of untested certainty. The timeless insight is this: people often believe what feels real, not what is real. The Stoic principle echoes this. Never accept an impression until you have inspected it. So, when someone presents a bold assertion, instead of absorbing it or reacting emotionally, you respond with calm curiosity. What evidence supports that? No tension, no accusation, just a clear invitation for reality. This question cuts straight through the performance of a debate. It forces the other person to inspect the actual foundation of their statement. Most arguments crumble right here because they were built on feeling, not proof. Imagine a teammate says, The entire team was frustrated with your report. A reactive person might apologize. A Stoic asks, "What evidence supports that?" Instantly, the entire team often shrinks to one person mentions something, or worse, "I just assumed." The fog dissipates immediately. Or someone claims, "She said you were mistaken." A reactive person explains themselves. You simply ask, "What evidence supports that?" Now, they must disclose if they heard it directly, misconstrued it, or fabricated it to bolster their position. This inquiry separates fact from feeling and feeling from fiction. Disagreements thrive when no one requests verification. They fall apart when verification becomes mandatory. The Stoics believe lucidity safeguards a mind, and lucidity cannot exist without substantiation. This question embodies that philosophy. Calm, rational, grounded. How you pose it is key. Deliver it gently, not aggressively, with curiosity, not suspicion, with steadiness, not heat. You are not attacking them. You are examining the claim. If they provide real data, the conversation progresses. If they cannot, the disagreement dissolves. And in either case, you remain centered. There is power in declining to accept unvetted statements. It shields you from manipulation. It keeps you out of narratives that were never true. It demonstrates that your tranquility is not shaped by their assumptions. What evidence supports that is a quiet filter. It traps every falsehood, every embellishment, every distortion before it can enter your mind. 3. Where'd you learn this? This question is a subtle pressure point and uncovers more truth than any counterargument ever could. Individuals speak with assurance even when their ideas lack any foundation. They repeat gossip as fact. They pass along suppositions disguised as certainty. They present personal views as if delivered by an objective authority. And most of the time, no one asks them where it originated. That is the source of its power. It interrupts the flow of emotional storytelling and demands connection to reality. When someone claims people are concerned about you, or they said your performance is declining, or everyone agrees with me, you don't react, defend, or worry. You simply breathe and ask, "Where'd you learn this?" This question does more than request a source. It exposes the entire structure behind their position. Some people immediately retreat because they never anticipated having to explain. Others become agitated because they were banking on their confidence going unchallenged. And a few will inadvertently reveal the truth, that their statement had no origin at all. Arguments feel potent only when they remain unexamined. This question strips away that shield. Picture a coworker telling you, "Management is unhappy with your last deliverable." You remain calm. You ask, "Where did you learn this?" Now, they must reveal if they heard it firsthand, inferred it, or relied on office rumors. Or imagine someone saying, "Your friends think you've been distant." A reactive person becomes anxious. You instead ask for the origin. Suddenly, the ambiguous accusation becomes fragile. You might discover it was one person's single comment, taken out of context or completely invented. Socrates used questions like this to reveal unearned confidence, to separate what someone felt they knew from what they actually knew. Stoicism teaches the same discipline. Do not accept impressions without tracing them to their origin. This question follows that ancient rule. It shifts the conversation from emotion to investigation. It returns the burden of truth to the person making the claim. It grants you the space to stay composed, collected, and firm. Your delivery matters as much as the question itself. Ask it with a steady tone. No challenge, no sharpness, just an honest request for clarity. If they can name a legitimate source, good. Now you're dealing with facts. If they cannot, the accusation disintegrates. Either result protects your mind from confusion and manipulation. By asking where information came from, you are not doubting them personally. You are doubting the pathway between what was said and what is real. And in that gap, the truth emerges. "Where did you learn this?" is not a confrontation. It is an audit. It is the moment where fantasy meets reality, and only one survives. For, can you provide a specific instance? This is the quiet dismantler of exaggeration. When someone generalizes, amplifies, or warps the truth, they lean heavily on broad, sweeping language. Words like always, never, everyone, no one, constantly, and you forever become weapons that carry emotional impact but zero accuracy. And the moment you request a concrete example, the entire facade begins to crack. People use generalizations to sidestep accountability. It allows them to express annoyance without precision. It lets them accuse without providing proof. It lets them sound like they're stating a universal law, when they're really reacting to one single incident that displeased them. So when someone launches a global statement at you, instead of defending yourself or retaliating, you simply ask, "Can you provide a specific instance?" This question forces the argument out of the abstract and back onto solid ground. It converts emotional speculation into a request for reality. It requires the other person to shift from a general vibe to a specific event. Picture someone saying, "You never contribute to the team." A reactive person will argue, listing all the times they did contribute or take it to heart. A stoic person asks for a specific instance. The moment you do, the emotional sting of the accusation softens, because now they must be accurate. They must think. They must return to the truth instead of the feeling. Or imagine a coworker claiming, "Your suggestions are constantly impractical." Instead of getting defensive, you calmly ask for an example. Suddenly, the word constantly collapses. Most often, they either cannot recall a single specific case, or they produce one isolated moment that doesn't support their dramatic sentence. This question reveals something vital. People rarely resent your behavior. They resent the story their mind constructed about your behavior. By asking for an example, you separate the story from reality. Socrates believed that truth resides in specifics, not in vague assertions. The Stoics taught that impressions must be examined against what is actually occurring. This question embodies both ideas. It pulls the argument away from presumption and back toward verifiable moments. How you ask is important. Your tone must be neutral, your expression calm, your curiosity authentic. You are not exposing them to humiliate them. You're asking them to be precise, because precision is the only path to clarity. Sometimes they will find an example, and then you can address the real issue productively. Sometimes they will hesitate, realizing the accusation lacks substance. Sometimes they will relax, recognizing they amplified things out of emotion. Whichever way it goes, you maintain the advantage of reason. "Can you provide a specific instance?" is a gateway. On one side is emotional distortion. On the other is truth. And one calm question is all it takes to step through. 5. Does that conclusion follow from your starting point? This is the inquiry that reveals the hidden framework of an argument. Most people do not build their conclusions on logic. They build them on emotion, on assumptions, on personal bias, or on one single event they then inflate into a universal rule. And the moment you ask this question, you shine a clear, unforgiving light on the chasm between what they feel and what actually makes sense. Arguments often sound compelling only because no one inquires how the conclusion was born. Someone gets annoyed, injured, or insecure, and they jump from a minor observation to a major indictment. They treat one occurrence as evidence of a permanent pattern. They treat one misunderstanding as proof of your character. They turn a single moment into a sweeping judgment. That is where this question becomes your anchor. Does that conclusion follow from your starting point? You are not assaulting them. You are not ridiculing them. You are not trying to shame them. You are asking them to inspect a bridge between their idea and their accusation. Picture someone saying, "Your strategy didn't work last time, so it will never work." The starting point is a single failure. The conclusion is perpetual failure. There is no logical bridge between the two. Only anxiety, frustration, or a wish to dissuade you. Or imagine someone stating, "You forgot one meeting, so you are not committed to this project." One action has now been bloated into a character judgment. The argument feels sharp, but it's hollow the instant you ask the question. They're compelled to acknowledge the leap they made. This question rewires the entire discussion. It takes the argument out of the emotional domain and places it on the terrain of rational thought. It forces the other person to either refine their thinking or drop the overstatement completely. Socrates used this style of questioning not to win debates, but to guide people towards seeing their own inconsistencies. Stoicism echoes the same principle. Thought and reality must align, or the mind becomes its own opponent. When you ask this, you slow the argument's tempo. You make the other person think instead of react. You turn the emotional surge into a moment of reflection. And most critically, you shield yourself from being pulled into a false story. Your delivery is vital. The tone must be calm, almost scholarly. Your posture open, your face neutral. You are not challenging them as a person, only challenging the reasoning behind their conclusion. If their logic is sound, the conversation progresses. If it isn't, the accusation deflates with remarkable speed. This question does not intensify conflict. It dismantles the delusions that create conflict in the first place. Does that conclusion follow from your starting point? It's not merely a question. It's a passageway back to truth, and most disputes cannot pass through it whole. The strongest reply is a question that reveals the flaw. 6. What would change your mind? This inquiry doesn't just challenge an argument. It challenges the very structure of someone's thinking. Most people don't realize they form beliefs the way a spider spins a web, instinctively, automatically, and without ever testing the strength of construction. Humans are wired to defend what they already hold to be true. Once the mind accepts a conclusion, it starts searching for anything that confirms it and filtering out anything that contradicts it. Modern psychology calls this confirmation bias, but Socrates identified it millennia ago. He understood that people cling to beliefs not because they are true, but because they feel secure. So when you ask, what would change your mind? You are doing something profoundly rare. You're asking the other person to identify the conditions under which they will concede they might be wrong. And most people cannot do it. This question achieves something no argument ever could. It reveals whether the conversation is rational or emotional, because a belief that cannot be disproven is not a belief. It's an identity. And once someone's identity is involved, logic becomes irrelevant, and the discussion becomes a battle of ego. Picture a coworker saying, "The boss has it out for me." You could argue, reassure, or try to present counter-evidence, but all that pulls you deeper into their emotional narrative. Instead, you respond calmly. What would change your mind? Now, they face a moment of reckoning. If they say nothing, then the belief isn't about reality. It's about a story they need to tell themselves. It is a shield, a justification, a way to guard their pride or evade responsibility. You cannot reason with a belief like that. You can only recognize that the person is not ready for truth. Or imagine a partner saying, "You don't respect me." A reactive person scrambles to defend, listing all the respectful things they've done. You instead ask, what would change your mind? Now, the question shifts the burden of proof back to its rightful place. They must define what respect looks like and whether their belief is anchored in fact or feeling. This question brings everything into sharp focus. It separates genuine issues from emotional tempests. It reveals whether you're dealing with someone who wants clarity or someone who wants to protect their narrative at any cost. Socrates used questions like this to expose the rigidity of unexamined thought. Stoicism teaches the same rule. If a belief cannot be questioned, it owns you. If it can be questioned, you own it. This question invites the other person into a moment of uncomfortable honesty. They suddenly have to face the possibility that their belief might not be as solid as they imagined. And in that hesitation, the argument loses its emotional thrust. There's another layer of potency here. When you ask what would change their mind, you also show them a path out of their own mental prison. You offer them a way to break free from their certainty without attacking them. You're not forcing them to abandon their stance. You're giving them a chance to think. The tone you use is critical. This question must be delivered without sarcasm, without insult, without the faintest hint of a gotcha. It must sound curious, almost soft, as if you are inviting them into a shared exploration rather than cornering them. Most people will falter when answering. Some will quietly realize their belief had no foundation. Some will try to defend their position, but soften as they speak. Some will evade the question entirely, which tells you all you need to know. When someone refuses to define what would change their mind, they reveal they are not searching for truth. They are searching for emotional validation. And that is the moment a Stoic steps away. You cannot reason someone out of a belief they never reasoned themselves into. What would change your mind is not confrontation. It's not manipulation. It's not even persuasion. It is a doorway. If they walk through it, The conversation becomes rational. If they refuse, you know precisely where the discussion's limits lie. You cannot control their beliefs, but you can control the clarity with which you see them. 7. Are we seeking truth or just victory? This is a final inquiry, and it is the one that delivers the deepest clarity, because beneath almost every heated argument, every raised voice, every charge, every emotional spike, there is something far more potent than logic. Ego. Human beings rarely argue to understand. Most argue to protect themselves, to defend pride, to avoid the sensation of being incorrect, or to maintain control over a situation that frightens them. And the moment you ask, are we seeking truth or just victory? You cut directly through the emotional armor they're hiding behind. This question doesn't assault the person. It questions the motivation propelling the argument. And motivations, when exposed, lose their power. When someone is arguing from ego, they don't desire truth. They desire triumph. They want to feel superior. They want to escape accountability. They want to shift responsibility onto you. But they don't want clarity, because clarity demands humility. This simple question interrupts that entire cycle. Imagine you're in a heated exchange with someone who keeps escalating. Each time you address one point, they move the goalpost. Each time you clarify something, they introduce a new issue. Nothing is settled because settlement was never the objective. You pause, breathe, and ask gently, are we seeking truth or just victory? Suddenly, the entire tone alters. It's as if you place a mirror directly between you. They now have to confront why they are fighting, not just what they're saying. Most people don't want to admit they're chasing victory, not truth. So the moment you ask, their emotional intensity diminishes. They pause. They reflect. Some even become sheepish about how far they've strayed from reason. This question is powerful because it accomplishes something no argument can. It reconnects the person to their own integrity. It forces them to look inward rather than defend outwardly. And if their goal was truth, they will appreciate the reminder. If their goal was victory, they will struggle to justify continuing the fight. Consider a relationship dispute where one person keeps pushing harder, louder, faster, like a storm trying to consume everything. Instead of matching their fury, you ask whether the conversation is about discovering truth or about winning the moment. Even in intense situations, this question can halt the spiral instantly. It introduces awareness into the heat of emotion. Stoicism teaches that ego is the greatest adversary of reason. Socrates held that an argument without a dedication to truth is mere noise. Combined, these philosophies remind us that the person seeking truth does not fear questions, and the person seeking victory cannot endure them. How you deliver it is everything. Your tone must be calm, neutral, perhaps even compassionate. It cannot sound accusatory or becomes another assault. It should sound like an invitation to reflect, not a challenge to defend. Sometimes the other person will realize they've been operating from ego and soften. Sometimes they will try to justify their behavior, but become less aggressive. Sometimes they will dodge the question completely, which tells you everything you need to know. This question grants you the ultimate power, the power to walk away with clarity when the conversation no longer resides in truth. Are we seeking truth or just victory? It is the final test of every argument, and most arguments fail it. Disagreements are loud. Truth is quiet. And throughout this entire video, you've seen how 7 simple inquiries can transform chaos into clarity, noise into structure, and emotional battles into moments of grounded awareness. Most people argue from instinct, not from intention. They react before they think. They defend before they examine. They pursue victory instead of understanding. But every Socratic question you've learned brings a conversation back to what truly matters. Reason. Each query slows the mind. Each query exposes assumptions. Each query places responsibility back where it belongs. And together they form an intellectual shield, a stoic guard that protects your peace in a world constantly trying to drag you into needless conflict. Socrates didn't win debates by force. He won by guiding others toward their own inconsistencies. The Stoics didn't stay calm because life was simple. They stayed calm because they questioned their impressions before emotion could take over. You now possess the same tools. Tools that let you remain centered when others lose themselves. Tools that reveal whether someone seeks truth or merely wants to win. Tools that help you walk away with lucidity instead of regret. Use them gently, use them wisely, and use them to safeguard your inner stillness, not to dominate others. If this video brought you value, please like the video. It truly helps the channel wins a thought. Comment below with your own experiences. Lead with reason. And remember, a calm question is always stronger than a loud argument.